My name is Greta. I'm 39 years old. And for most of my life, I never cared about wealth, power, or anything remotely dramatic. I was never one of those people obsessed with making it big or climbing some imaginary social ladder. I liked stability. I liked having enough to pay my bills, enough to take a vacation once in a while, enough to not feel stressed every time an unexpected expense popped up. I never needed luxury, just comfort. For most of my career, I worked as a marketing specialist at a mid-sized company that sold household appliances. It wasn't the kind of job that made people lean in at dinner parties, but I liked it. It was steady, reliable, and I was good at it. My days were spent creating advertising campaigns, analyzing consumer trends, and brainstorming ways to convince people that they absolutely needed a new, high-tech toaster. It wasn't a dream job, but it paid the bills and gave me a routine. I lived in a modest but cozy apartment, a place I had worked hard to afford on my own. I never liked the idea of relying on someone else to take care of me. I wasn't married, didn't have kids, and I was fine with that. But the one thing I did have, my family, and for most of my life, I believed that was enough. I had always been close to my father. He was the kind of man who believed in hard work, discipline, and earning your way through life. He had never been a flashy businessman, but he had built something stable, a small chain of electronics stores that he had run for over 30 years. Nothing extravagant, nothing high profile, but enough to give him a comfortable life. And then there was my sister Sonya. Sonya was different. We were only a few years apart, but we may as well have been raised on different planets. Where I was practical, Sonya was reckless. Where I focused on saving, she spent every dollar she ever touched. She wasn't a bad person, not exactly, but she had a way of making problems for herself and then acting surprised when they caught up with her. She jumped from job to job, always chasing some exciting new opportunity that never actually turned into anything. She borrowed money constantly from our father, from friends, from boyfriends, always swearing she'd pay it back as soon as things took off. Spoiler. Things never took off. Still, she was my sister, and despite her irresponsibility, I never truly believed she was capable of real harm. Not until everything fell apart. It started with our father's health. He had always been strong, the kind of man who never complained, who would wave off a cough or a sore back, like it was nothing. But then he started slowing down, getting tired more easily, losing weight without trying. At first, he refused to go to the doctor, said he was just getting older. But when he finally did go, the diagnosis came fast and brutal. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. There was nothing they could do. I remember sitting with him in the hospital trying to act strong, even though every part of me was screaming. "I've had a good life, Greta," he told me. "I don't want you worrying about me. You and Sonya will be fine." I didn't cry, not in front of him. I didn't let myself break down because I knew that once I did, I wouldn't be able to stop. Instead, I focused on taking care of things. I was the one who handled his medical paperwork, the one who made sure his bills were paid on time, the one who drove him to his appointments, while Sonya showed up whenever it was convenient for her. She'd breeze into the hospital room with expensive takeout, chattering about some new business idea she was working on, acting like everything was normal. She never stayed long. "Hospitals are so depressing," she said once, wrinkling her nose. "I don't know how you do it." I wanted to scream, but I didn't, because Sonya was Sonya, and I had learned long ago that expecting responsibility from her was a waste of time. Instead, I stayed by my father's side, and when the time came, when he finally closed his eyes for the last time, I was the one holding his hand. Sonya wasn't even there. She had been out to dinner. She showed up later in tears, wailing like she had lost her best friend. I stood there, numb, watching her put on a performance for people who didn't know any better. I didn't say anything, because at that moment, I thought nothing else mattered. I thought we had already lost everything. I had no idea that the real betrayal hadn't even begun yet. In the days after my father's passing, Everything felt like a blur. The funeral came and went in a haze of condolences, flower arrangements, and murmured apologies from people who barely knew him. I stood there, shaking hands, nodding politely, accepting the same meaningless phrases over and over again. "I'm so sorry for your loss. He was such a good man. If you need anything, let us know." But no one could give me what I really needed. I needed one more conversation with my dad. One more cup of coffee in his kitchen. One more chance to tell him that everything he taught me about life, about being strong, about standing on my own, I had heard him. I just wished I could have told him that before he was gone. Sonya, meanwhile, was everywhere. She fluttered around the funeral like she was hosting a charity gala, putting on just the right amount of sadness to make sure people noticed her grief, but not enough to let it actually inconvenience her. "Dad wouldn't want us to be miserable," she had said. Shaking her head, squeezing my arm in what I assumed was supposed to be a comforting gesture. "We have to keep moving forward." I remember just staring at her. I wanted to ask, how do you move forward from losing the only parent who ever cared about you? But I didn't. Because I was exhausted. Because, honestly, I was done expecting her to understand anything. The only thing that kept me grounded was knowing that, at the very least, there was one thing I wouldn't have to worry about: the will. My father had been clear about his wishes. He had always told me that when the time came, his estate, his savings, his small chain of electronics stores, the house we grew up in, would be split equally between us. "Half and half," he had said more than once. No arguments, no drama, just fair. I believed him. I shouldn't have. Because Sonya had other plans. It started with small things, little delays, vague explanations. When I asked about the will, Sonya was suddenly the expert on the process. "Oh, it's all being handled, don't worry," she told me. "It takes time, Greta, just trust the lawyers. I'd like to talk to them myself." "There's no need for that. I've been working directly with them, and everything is going smoothly." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that for once she was being responsible. But then, one afternoon, I got a call. "Ms. Reynolds? This is Mr. Carter from Wallace & Associates. I wanted to inform you that your father's will has been finalized." Finalized? I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't even seen the paperwork. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "There must be a mistake," I said. "I haven't been involved in any of this." There was a pause. Then carefully the lawyer said, "The estate was left entirely to your sister." I stopped breathing. "I'm sorry?" "Your father's most recent will designates your sister as the sole beneficiary." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "That's not possible," I managed to say. "I understand this is unexpected," the lawyer said, his voice polite, professional, detached, like he hadn't just told me that my father's entire life's work had been handed over to the one person who least deserved it. And just like that, I knew. I knew exactly what had happened. Sonya had done something, manipulated him, tricked him, maybe even forged something, and now she had taken everything. She had taken my father's legacy. And when I confronted her, she didn't even pretend to be sorry. "Oh, Greta, don't be dramatic," she had said, rolling her eyes like I was some child throwing a tantrum. "Dad wanted this. He knew I needed it more than you." "You needed it?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "Well, yeah," she scoffed. "You have a job. You're fine. I've been struggling, Greta. I deserve this chance to get ahead." I remember staring at her, my hands clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. "You stole from me." "Dad made a decision," she said, tilting her head, like she actually believed her own lies. "You should respect it." I couldn't even speak. I just turned and walked away. Because what was the point? She had won. Or at least, she thought she had. But I knew one thing about Sonya. She had no idea how to manage money, and she was about to learn that inheriting wealth doesn't mean you get to keep it. So, I didn't fight her. I didn't beg. I didn't take her to court. I didn't waste my breath trying to convince her to do the right thing. I just waited, because Sonya had just given herself a countdown to disaster. And all I had to do was watch. I didn't reach out to Sonya after that. I didn't ask for explanations, didn't beg for what was mine, didn't waste a single second trying to make her feel guilty. Because Sonya didn't do guilt. She had taken everything, and in her mind that meant she had won. So I let her believe it. And then I watched as she burned through every last cent. At first, she did exactly what I expected. She flaunted her new wealth. She sold my father's house, the house we grew up in, and moved into a luxury apartment downtown. She quit her job, not that she ever really kept one for long, and started living like she had an endless trust fund. Dinners at expensive restaurants, weekend trips to resorts, shopping sprees where she bought things just because she could. And of course, she made sure everyone knew. She posted pictures of her designer handbags, her first-class flights, her celebrating my new life champagne toasts. I watched from a distance, shaking my head but not surprised, because I knew one thing Sonya didn't. Money disappears fast when you don't know how to manage it. And Sonya, she had never known how to manage anything. At first, she looked like she was on top of the world. But then, slowly, things started to shift. First, she stopped bragging so much. The posts became less flashy, the photos a little less extravagant. Then, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had sold her car. Just upgrading to something more practical, she had told people. Sure. Then she started skipping events, not showing up at the places she used to frequent. The people she used to party with, they weren't around as much anymore. And then, about a year and a half after she stole my inheritance, I got a message from her. Hey, can we talk? I stared at the text for a long moment. She hadn't reached out once since taking everything, not a single word. And now, I already knew what this was about. She was broke. I ignored the message. A few days later, she tried again. Greta, I know you're probably mad at me, but I really need your help. I wasn't mad, not anymore, because I had predicted this exact moment, but I answered this time. What do you need, Sonya? Things have been rough. I made some bad investments and I have some debts I need to take care of. I just need a little help getting back on my feet. I almost laughed. She had wasted everything, and now she was coming to me. She really thought I was going to bail her out after what she had done. No. That was all I said. She tried again. Greta, please, we're family. You can't just turn your back on me. Family. That word used to mean something to me, but family doesn't steal from you. Family doesn't betray you. Family doesn't leave you with nothing and then come crawling back when they've lost it all. You turned your back on me first, I replied. And then I blocked her, because I was done. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. Meanwhile, I was doing better than ever. While she had spent the last year burning through money, I had been building something real. I had worked my way up at my job, taken risks, fought for promotions. And now, I wasn't just some marketing specialist anymore. I was the head of the marketing department. A position I had earned. Not because of luck, not because of family ties, not because someone handed it to me, but because I had worked for it, because I had built my own success. And that was something Sonya could never take away from me. After I blocked Sonya, I didn't think about her much. Not in an angry way, not even in a way that made me feel bitter. She just didn't matter anymore. For the first time in my life, I wasn't dealing with her messes, I wasn't cleaning up after her mistakes, or bracing myself for whatever disaster she'd create next. I had cut her out completely, and I didn't regret it for a second. Meanwhile, my life had never been better. Work was thriving. The promotion to head of marketing wasn't just a title. It was a real shift in my life. I wasn't sitting in meetings as the quiet observer anymore. Now people listened when I spoke. I was leading campaigns, setting strategies, making decisions that actually shaped the company. And with that came money. Real money. Not Sonya's kind of money, the kind that vanishes as fast as it appears, but earned money. The kind you can count on. the kind that doesn't make you feel like you're standing on unstable ground. I upgraded my apartment, not to something ridiculously flashy, just a bigger, nicer space with an office for myself and a balcony where I could drink coffee in the mornings. I traveled, something I never let myself do much before because I was always too focused on being responsible. For the first time, I allowed myself to enjoy things without feeling guilty about it, because I had built this life myself. And then one day, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in a while. I was at a coffee shop, in line for my usual order, when I heard a voice behind me. "Greta?" I turned. It was Lisa, an old acquaintance. Someone who used to run in the same social circles as Sonya. "Wow, I haven't seen you in forever," she said, giving me a once-over. "You look amazing." I smiled, because I did. I looked confident, pulled together, like someone who had her life figured out. Lisa, on the other hand, she looked uncomfortable, like she had something she wanted to say but wasn't sure if she should. "What's new with you?" I asked, keeping my tone polite. Lisa hesitated. Then she sighed. "So, have you talked to Sonya?" I almost laughed. Of course. That's why she was suddenly acting awkward. "No," I said simply, "and I don't plan to." Lisa nodded like she expected that. "She's not doing great," she admitted. "I ran into her a couple weeks ago. She looks terrible, Greta. I think she's in real trouble." I just tilted my head. "Oh?" Lisa fidgeted. "Yeah, she's been couch surfing. I heard she got evicted from her place and, well, you know Sonya. She burned a lot of bridges when she had money. Now that it's gone, people aren't exactly lining up to help her." I should have felt something. Pity, maybe. Sadness. A little nostalgia for what our relationship used to be. But I didn't, because this was all her doing. She had made a choice when she took everything from me, when she lied, schemed, and manipulated her way into my father's money. She had thought she was untouchable, that she could do whatever she wanted and life would keep handing her chances. But real life doesn't work that way. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "I hope she figures things out," I said, meaning it, but not in the way Lisa probably thought. I wasn't going to save Sonya. I wasn't going to bail her out the way she expected me to, because some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Lisa gave me a weird look, like she was expecting me to say more. I didn't, because I had nothing left to say about Sonya. She had been part of my past, but my future, that was all mine. And I wasn't looking back. Months passed, and Sonya became nothing more than a distant memory. I stopped hearing about her entirely. No random messages from mutual acquaintances, no whispers about what she was doing, no pathetic attempts from her to reach me. And honestly, I preferred it that way, because while she had crumbled under the weight of her own decisions, I was flourishing. My life was calm, stable, successful. Everything Sonya had never understood and never cared to work for. I had built something real, a career that mattered, a financial foundation that wouldn't disappear overnight, a life that felt entirely my own. One afternoon, after a long but satisfying day at work, I stopped by my favorite cafe, the same one where I had run into Lisa months ago. I ordered my coffee, took a seat by the window, and just breathed. It was one of those moments where I realized just how much had changed. The woman I was now, the woman sitting in that cafe, sipping her coffee, feeling completely in control of her life, she wasn't the same person who had stood in shock, listening to a lawyer tell her she had been written out of her own father's will. That woman had been angry, hurt, blindsided, but now I felt nothing but clarity. And then, just as I was about to leave, I saw her, Sonya. She was walking down the street, wearing clothes that looked nothing like the designer outfits she used to flaunt. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was now pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked tired. I could tell she hadn't seen me. For a moment, I just watched her, watched the way she moved, not with the confidence she once had, but with hesitation, like she was unsure of where she was going. And in that moment, I knew. She had nothing left. No money, no safety net, no one left to clean up her mess. She had taken everything my father had worked for and burned through it like it meant nothing. And now she had to live with that. She had betrayed me, thinking she had won. But in reality, she had only destroyed herself. And me, I had risen from it. As I stood to leave, I took one last look at her. Not with anger, not with resentment, just acceptance. Because some people never change. And some people, no matter how much you once loved them, are better left behind. So I walked out, didn't say a word, didn't look back. Because this was my life now. And Sonya, she was nothing more than a lesson I had already learned. A few weeks after I last saw Sonya, I found myself thinking about her less and less. Not in an intentional way. Not because I was trying to block her out. She just faded. My life had become so full, so stable, so mine that she no longer had a place in it. I was busy running marketing campaigns, leading a team, making decisions that actually mattered. I had spent so many years in the background, doing the work while other people got the credit. Not anymore. Now, when I walked into a meeting, people listened. Now, when I made a suggestion, it was implemented. And the best part? I had earned all of it. One evening, after finishing a major presentation at work, I decided to treat myself to dinner at a quiet restaurant near my office. I got a glass of wine, a nice meal, and let myself enjoy the moment. I didn't need to check my phone constantly. I didn't feel the weight of anyone else's problems. I wasn't waiting for the next crisis to fix. I was just there, in the present, in my own life. And that's when it hit me. I had spent so many years being the responsible one, the steady one, the one who never made reckless choices. And while I never regretted that, I also realized that I had never truly allowed myself to just live. Sonya had burned through money trying to chase happiness. She thought it came from luxury, from impressing people, from having more than others. But real happiness? It's peace. It's sitting in a restaurant alone, not because you have no one, but because you're completely content with yourself. It's knowing that everything you have, you built with your own hands. That was the real difference between Sonya and me. She had always been chasing something. I had created something. And that was why I won. Not because she failed, not because she lost everything, but because I had built a life she could never take away from me.